Alright, so let's check out simplifying expressions with distribution. So we're going to use the distributive property here. And so here we have an expression. We don't have an equal sign. So this is an expression. You're going to have parentheses. So when you see distribution or when we use distribution, it's going to be when parentheses come up in either an expression or an equation. We have an expression here. So it's 4, and then in parentheses we have 2x plus 5. So with what we know about multiplication, really we're multiplying 4 times whatever values are inside of the parentheses here. So if we had like 4 times 5 inside parentheses, we'd basically multiply 4 times 5 and that would be 20. Alright, well, we don't have one single number in there, and we've got a variable. We've got two terms in there. We've got a 2x plus 5. So when you distribute, you actually take the number that's on the outside of the parentheses, in this case it's a 4, and you multiply it by all of the values inside the parentheses. So check it out. We're going to do 4, draw some arrows here on your notes. So we're going to first do 4 times 2x, and then we're going to multiply 4 times the 5 that's over there hanging out after the 2x. So let's do the first part. We got 4 times 2x. Well, 4 times 2 is 8, and then we keep the x with it. You keep the variable that is with your term. The plus sign is going to stay. We don't have a sign change there, so clean that up again. So 8x plus, and then we have 4 times 5. Well, 4 times 5 is 20. So we've simplified this expression. I have two terms, 8x plus 20. I can't simplify that anymore. So we just distributed the 4. We multiplied it. Distribute means to hand out, basically. And we multiply in math when you distribute. So we multiplied the 4 times the values inside the parentheses. So when we distribute, I talked about it for a second, but so you can have this down as your notes in your example. So when we distribute, we multiply the outside term by each term inside of the parentheses. And don't forget about negatives and integer rules. That's going to come up. You're going to see some examples of that in just a second, but don't forget about those. So that's exactly what we did in the first example. We took the outside number of 4, we multiplied it by the 2x with a variable, we got 8x plus, and then we did 4 times 5, and we got 20. And we can't solve any more than that. The 8x plus 20, remember, we can't add that. So that's what we have. When we distribute, we're multiplying inside of the parentheses. Let's try another example. Let's pull in a negative here. So I've got a negative 2, and we're going to distribute that into m minus 7. m minus 7. So, alright, so you know we're going to take this negative 2. We're going to multiply it by the m, and then we're going to multiply it by, it says minus 7. That's going to be a negative 7. We're going to keep that sign. I'll talk about it in a second. Alright, well, let's multiply here. So, negative 2 first. Negative 2 into multiplying times that m is going to get negative 2m, and I'll put that in red so we know that that's a negative value. So negative 2m. And then we're going to multiply the negative 2 times the 7, but we're going to keep this sign in front. So it's like a negative 7. I know that looks like a minus sign, but that's a negative 7. That gives it a negative value. So negative 2 times a negative 7, this is when we want to remember our integer rules. When you multiply a negative times a negative, it cancels out. You get a positive. So this is actually going to turn into negative 2m plus, get my plus in here, plus 14. 2 times 7 is 14. And that negative turned to a positive, and we got negative 2m plus 14. Remember, when you multiply two negatives, you cancel out and get a positive there. And we can't do anything with a negative 2m plus 14. That's as simplified as we can get it. So that is our simplified solution right over there. Alright, so what you can also do is you can take variables outside of the parentheses, and you can distribute the variables to other terms. So let's try an example of that. Here there's just letters, just variables, no numbers. I've got an a outside of the parentheses. I'm going to distribute that into, or multiply it into the b plus c. So how does that work? Well, it works like this. Check it out. So again, arrows. A times the b, and then we're going to multiply a times the c. And here's what that looks like. So a times b is, maybe you thought of it, it's going to be ab. When you multiply a times b, you get ab. They basically combine and they come together. We keep our plus sign here, no change in the plus or minus. I can't really get a straight plus sign in there, but I think I get it. That'll work. And then we multiply the A times the C. Well, just like we did with the AB, we're going to get A. We keep the A, and we kind of just put the C on with it, AC. So when you multiply variables, you basically end up kind of combining them. So distributing the A means we multiplied the A times the B and got AB. Then we multiplied the A times the C, and we got AC. And the A is always going to go first when you put it in with your variable answers here, because you're distributing the A in. It will go in first when you list those inside of your expression in this case. All right. So how about one last tricky one here that has, we got negatives, we've got variables, and we even have some combining like terms, which we've talked about recently. So we've got a negative 3x on the outside, we've got in parentheses 2y plus 4, and then out of parentheses there's a plus 2x tacked on to the end. All right, well, let's distribute. That's what this whole thing is about. So we're going to take negative 3x, and we're first going to multiply it or distribute it into the values only inside the parentheses, right? So just inside those values you see there. So check this out. How does this work when you have something like a negative 3x times a 2y? Okay, and this can be tricky. Well, let's start with our regular values. If you had negative 3 times a positive 2, you're going to get a negative 6. Okay, so you have a negative 6. If one's negative, one's positive. When you multiply, you get a negative. So negative 6. Now what variables do we put? Well, we're going to keep them both. We have an x and a y, so we have negative 6 x y. So that turned into negative 6 xy. Now we are distributing, we got that one out of the way. We got to distribute the negative 3x in over here to the 4. Negative 3x times 4. Negative 3x times 4. Well, negative 3 times a positive 4 is going to end up with a negative 12. So we're actually going to have a sign change in here. I'm going to put that minus 12 to signify the negative 12. And then we've got to keep the x. The x didn't go away, but I don't have a y in this case. The 4 was just by itself, so we're just going to have the x because we distributed the negative 3x. And then what do we do from there? Well, we continue. We just tack on this plus 2x. We tack that on plus 2x. And we don't distribute because that was not inside of the parentheses. Okay. So check this out. We actually have some like terms here, okay? And we've talked about this pretty recently. I've got an x term here, and I've got an x term here. So we can continue to simplify, okay? So let's try that. I still have underneath, I've got my negative 6 xy. But then I've got a negative 12x and a positive 2x. So if I had negative 12x plus 2x, that's actually in the negatives. That's like being underwater, negative 12 feet, and then coming back up 2 feet should be negative 10x if I combine those like terms. So all I did is basically combine those like we would add or subtract integers, and then we have an x value there. I got rid of them. We're done. And so the full simplified answer here would be negative 6 xy minus 10x, negative 6 xy minus 10x, and that would be how we can simplify this. And we use distribution, we had variables, and then we combined some like terms there. So great job on the notes. You guys are awesome. Have a good day.